Welcome inside another edition of Mountaineer Report, brought to you by WVU Sports Now. I am Mike Asti as always, and that is Ethan Bock, and we are going to play a game on this edition of Mountaineer Report, our 6th episode of this podcast, as we are nearing the football season and the rest of the Mountaineer athletic calendar as well, but really close to kick off against Penn State for the Mountaineers. We're going to play over-under. So I'm going to rattle off some stats, some numbers for some key players on offense, maybe defense, depending on how long this goes. And if it goes too long, then we'll leave defense for another show. So that'll be a tease for you. But we will see where we land on whether or not we think Garrett Greene, Jahiem White, Cole Taylor, all the way to maybe Day Farmer are going to be in terms of some key numbers and stats. And we likely will leave our predictions overall and what the team's going to do win-loss-wise for another show as well. But if a lot of this goes well, where will that put the team? And if a lot of this doesn't go well, where will that put the team? Just things for you guys to think about while you're watching and consuming this. Feel free to comment along with any of your answers for any of these over-unders. Also, of course, like and subscribe here on YouTube if you're watching the video. And we also now are available everywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Google Play, etc. So, Ethan, we're going to start this off at the top, as we got to, with Garrett Greene. He's the MVP of this team. If he doesn't play well, this team's going nowhere. And if he misses games, who knows? They won without him last year, but they cannot bank on that. So Garrett Greene finished about 2,400 passing yards last year that included missing some time with an injury. Went to the Manning Passing Academy again, should be better through the air. Get to how accurate he is in a moment, but where are you on an over-under for 3,000 passing yards for Greene?
I'm at an under for that, just because I think it's going to take a little bit, probably the non-conference, at least the first 2 games, to really for him to figure out, like we've talked about, who his wide receiver one is.
Yeah,
obviously, I think his
got a lot of them, maybe. Yeah.
His red zone threat is Cole Taylor.
Yeah.
And Hudson Clement's probably that answer right now for wide receiver one. But I just also think they need to focus on the run game. That's their niche. So, and just for 3,000, I think that's a little – I think for him to get over 3,000, that would be a really good senior year for him.
To say the least. I mean, that would be what you would probably need to get him legitimately in Heisman conversations, to get legitimately into these conversations. He's on watch list now, but to stay there all through the season for these individual awards, Johnny Unitas Golden Arm would certainly be something he'd be vying for if he's there. I'm tempted almost. I almost kind of want to be boring and go push just because he missed those games. And if he, just doing the math here, and we're journalists, not math majors, if he throws even just shy of 200 yards a game, or certainly gets over 200 yards a game, he's at least close, if not getting to that number. I'm going to say under as well, though. That just seems really high, and you also got to figure he's going to still be doing a lot on the ground with his legs. Just naturally, that's what he does. And if he's more accurate, that may mean more checkdowns and less attempts at big plays. Not that they're not going to try for them, but it might actually mean more of a careful Garrett Greene, which is what you'd probably want, and maybe that brings down the overall yardage. So I'm also going to say under there. But for another important stat, over under 30 touchdowns. He was at 20, and I'm talking about combined through the air and on the ground. He was at 29 with missed games last year. 16 through the air, only 4 interceptions. I have these numbers memorized for some reason, by the way, but maybe I've written about him so many times. But 29 TDs. I'm going to jump out and say that feels like that got to be the over with missed time, or else there's a problem. With more weapons on offense too.
Yeah, that should be an over, especially if healthy. Even if he missed a game or two, I would still be confident taking the over on 30 total touchdowns.
And I would even be confident even if they have a bad year as a team, because you have to figure the offense is going to score points. And if they say win 7 games into a disappointing year, then it's probably because the defense collapses. Maybe he turns it over a lot. But even if he does, there still should be some yards. There still should be some touchdowns. So that does seem easy. And then the age-old question with Garrett Greene that's been talked about all offseason. We've talked about it on this show. It's almost annoying, and I feel like a little bit overblown, but we're going to ask it here. Garrett Greene won 65% completion percentage. I'm not going to do the over under there because it just seems insane. And that would then mean he's vying for Heisman, and they should be winning the conference if he's at those numbers. The program wants him at 60. He was at 52.9 in 2023. That was his first year as a full-time starter. He knows the offense now. He has more comfortability with the staff, of course, as the guy. Most of his key contributors from last year are back, including the line, and there's some veterans that are at it as well. So over under 60% completion percentage for Greene.
I think under, but not by much. At 65 for him. That's like we talked about. That's a huge jump.
That's a huge jump. Yeah,
12% jump right there.
Yeah.
Like even it's. I don't think people realize like the 53%. Like fans or national media, if you watch Garrett Greene, he makes so many big plays that it almost cancels that bad percentage out. Especially with his run game as well, just adding that other weapon. But I'm feeling like a 57, 58, 59%, just right under that 60 mark.
Yeah, I do think it's around 58. If it's any lower, it's probably a problem. 60 wouldn't surprise me if he really plays smarter and uses those checkdowns and lets the running backs do the work, because that also can be a benefit for him, and we'll get to their numbers here in a moment. But I'm also going to be under 60%. I'm definitely going to be under 65%. If he's at either one of those numbers, one of two things is either occurring. Either they're really, really good and they're definitely in the playoff and they're winning the Big 12 and it's one of the best seasons in a long time, or the other option is there's a lot less pass attempts. They become a really run-first team, even more so than they've been, and he gets a higher completion percentage because he's not even trying to throw as many passes. But I don't think that's going to happen. They want to have a versatile offense. They threw a lot of balls last year, even though they were run first. It's going to be a similar recipe this year as it was last year. Brown's calling plays again, so it's going to be the same plays everyone's used to of Brown, whether you like it or not. And that's going to lead to some chances for Greene. He'll take some chances that aren't even drawn up in the playbook. And how many of those will kill you will be the problem. Only the 4 picks. That can't be higher. I'm not going to do an over-under there, though, for the purpose of time. But I do think under 60%, that just seems like a really high bar. And we will be nice to what Ethan said there. I know some fans like this and rather use this number and get annoyed when I throw the 52.9. It's literally 52.9, but we'll say 53. We will round up to 53. I will compromise. But yeah, 60% would be wild and 65 would just be out of control. So moving through the offensive stars here on this over-under edition of Mountaineer Report on WVSN, Jahiem White. They have they're co-partners, him and CJ, but he's the RB1. He is. He emerged last year. It's going to be a full season of that. He had 842 yards in a season that a lot of casual fans were not even really aware of him, and certainly not around the country until middle of that year. And he did not enter the season as the guy. He averaged over 7 yards a carry, almost at 8, I believe 7.7. Over under 1,000 yards. It seems like without even trying, he should be there as long as he gets similar carries to last year, and maybe obviously he might get more.
Yeah, I think fans will actually be disappointed if Jahiem White doesn't hit that 1,000 mark. Just
probably, yeah,
based off of the end of the year he had. Just looking at his game logs, he only had 4 games over 100 rushing yards, but that's also because he didn't get as many attempts until towards the end of the year, especially when CJ Donaldson was hurt.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how their numbers in total between CJ and Jahiem, just where they end up and how the team just splits their rushing attempts and how they strategize using them in certain situations.
It does feel like that even though they're still going to have to give some touches to CJ, they want to be a two-headed monster. Jahiem is smaller, so I don't think he can handle 25, 30 carries every game. You figure CJ maybe is now in better shape. He admitted last year was an average year. He wants more. He's hungry as well. But even with all of that said, Jahiem White, even if he's close to his averages of last season, knowing the defenses now have film on him, he appears ready for it. I wrote about it. He's mature. I think 1,000 yards is going to happen. And if it doesn't, it is a major disappointment. Not just the fans. It's legit to be upset if you're a fan. The coaches, him, everyone would be really disappointed. And if that doesn't happen, either Green's going to have to go over 3,000 through the air, or CJ's going to have to be 900 plus or something like that on the ground. They're going to have to make it up somewhere because they want to be a run first driven team like the great Mountaineer teams of old. So they got to hit that 2,000, 2,500 number, which basically happened last year despite Greene missing some time and Nico getting some yards in the ground. You factor in Greene getting some rushing yards, over 700 last year with missed time, figuring CJ in a bad year got 798 last year. They need White, though, to be the star. So I'm going to say over 1,000, and I just can't see how it's not over 1,000. I mean, even if he doesn't get more touches, he does the same thing he did last year, the same amount of looks, and plays a few more games, then he'll be there. I want to skip CJ, and yeah, the bar could be 800, could be 700. He got to do more than that just to get through this. Cole Taylor, though, he wants 50 catches. Didn't happen last year. He's better. The offense is better. He knows the offense more. Him and Greene are friends. They're roommates. Obviously, there's chemistry there. He's even more comfortable in major conference football now, and Brown knows him. A lot of that could say that he should be at 50-plus catches. But what do you say, Ethan? Because he's not the only guy now vying for red zone looks.
Yeah, I think 50, I have to take the under on that. And it's kind of similar to Green's passing percentage. I think Cole Taylor can get up to that 45, 47 receptions on the year kind of range.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many more red zone weapons that they had this year as compared to last year. I still think there's questions of who Garrett Greene could target in the red zone. And that's if it's not on big plays downfield. Like if they actually drive and get to the red zone and have more red zone attempts this year and can actually finish drives, as that was a problem last season, Cole Taylor's numbers will go up. But I also think just with all the wide receivers now, they just have a better core. I think for Cole Taylor, it's going to take away from him.
I do think it's going to take away from him. I think he'll be a better player. His film for the NFL might be better, but even if he's dragging defenders, we saw that against BYU. If he's dragging defenders to extend plays, that's going to help his yards. Maybe he'll be over 500 yards, which is an over-under I put out there. He didn't get to that last year either. But that also will hurt his catches because then they're going to be closer to scoring. He might get him in the end zone or somebody else might get the red zone TD. They got to make a lot of people happy. They brought in transfers. They brought in big body, tall transfers in Jaden Bray and Justin Robinson. Bray's probably higher on the depth chart than J-Rob, but they all got to get involved somewhere, some way, or they're wasting money, literally. So they got to figure that out. That's almost the stress of a coach this year at WVU, that you have a lot more to work with, but it can actually create stress when you're scheming for these games because you got to get these guys involved, and it's easier said than done, I would imagine.
Yeah, and we talked about it a little bit before the show. Just they brought in Justin Robinson, and then they brought in Jaden Bray.
Yeah.
So 2 transfers. Even if it's just one of them that emerges and steps up,
yeah,
that does a lot for if you're trying to keep Rodney Gallagher happy, Day Farmer, Traylon Ray. That's also something they got to balance within the receiver corps. You got to keep those young guys happy, those 4-star recruits happy, as well as those transfers that you brought in.
Yeah, because as you know, you're dealing with basically free agency every single season. The program brought most of the core back last year who had eligibility left, but there's no guarantee that happens again. And whether they win or not, Jaden Bray even said it, winning's not the number one reason why he's there. He wanted to be a focus of an offense and get more touches and show what he can really do. So that means that if they're collecting W's and he's not involved, he's probably not really happy. And that's not a ding on the kid. That he wants to take care of his own career. So with that said, Jaden Bray, 600 yards as a receiver. This is a guy who screams having a chance to be wide receiver 1 with Hudson Clement, but he's never been that, and his numbers have never been near that in this same conference of the Big 12.
I'm going to go under on 600 yards. I think Hudson Clement's going to emerge as that wide receiver 1. I think that's going to be our answer that we've been asking ourselves all month, all offseason. Cole Taylor, I think his receiving numbers will go up. I don't think he'll get the 50 receptions, but even if he got 10 more receptions last year, that's more yards to his total as well. And he averaged 12 yards a catch. So his numbers would go up as well. So I think 600 for Jaden Bray is a little too high. And if he got to 600, then I think he accomplished what he needed to do here, especially if he got way above 600.
Yeah, and you could argue, and I thought about 500 or 550, but that's where he wants to be, so that's why I put it there. But that would be accomplishing more than even Devin Carter did last year. He didn't get near that, and his whole goal was to come and get more of a chance and be more of an NFL player, and that didn't work out so well for him. As we continue with this over-under game here on Mountaineer Report here on WVSN properties, you mentioned him, Hudson Clement. I think he definitely goes into the year as the wide receiver one. Him and Greene are really close. They have the chemistry. He's the incumbent guy. He wasn't a scholarship a year ago, but he's working like he's still a walk-on, and he now has a lot of games and big plays under his belt, so that really doesn't matter anymore. Over-under, give you two here, 40 catches and 650 yards for Clement, and last year he only had 22 catches for 480 yards and 4 TDs, but as we mentioned, he certainly was not a top guy in all of the games. He did not gain even a scholarship until exploding against Duquesne, and that actually had a significant portion of his numbers in that game because he was so great against the Dukes with 177 yards to be exact in that game, 89 of them against North Carolina, although I'm giving you regular season numbers. But 40 catches, 650 for Clement. If he's the wide receiver one, I'd imagine it got to be over in both of those two fronts, or there's a problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Just a lot of his plays were big yard plays, big time plays.
Yeah.
And I think it would be beneficial for him, obviously, just like Jahiem White, to get that whole season just complete from start to finish. And show that consistency every game. Yeah, I think he can get up to 40
a lot of these guys, you got to keep adding that caveat. They did this without a full season. They missed games. They weren't a star to open up the year. This is nice, and they all come back. You actually can see what they all can do, whether you're a scout, whether you're another program trying to steal them, or whether you're a West Virginia fan and you want to have success this year right now. Do you think the 650 comes with the 40?
I think the 650 would have to come with the 40, especially if it's all these 40-yard plays, 30, 40-yard plays. He averaged 22 yards a reception. If he got 40 catches, like,
it
would have to, I can't do the multiplication in my head, like, just off the rip, but the 650 would have to come with that.
So on the top of your head there, where do you think he really would be then, though? With everything you're saying, I do think kind of easily he should be over those numbers. Do you think 800 should be a thing for him? I mean, those are high numbers now.
I'm thinking 650, 700, that range.
Okay. To throw in Justin Robinson a bone here, J-Rob, over under 300 yards. He was under that at Mississippi State in the SEC. The depth chart is going to be rough to crack, but again, he might get red zone looks. I don't know if that means yards. That may mean touchdowns. I don't know if that means yards.
Yeah, I think there's just too many options. And like Traylon Ray had 300 yards last year.
Yep, we're going to get to him.
And that could increase as well. So I just think there's only one ball. If they're not rushing it, they have all these receivers that they can pass to, and with a red zone threat tight end. So I think with Justin Robinson, I think 300 yards is a little too much to ask for with just how many weapons that Garrett Greene could pass to.
I'm going to say under 2, and as I told you before we hit record, I'm going to say it now publicly. I think he's the one player that may individually regret his transfer. He may like Morgantown. The fans may like him. He's a nice kid, and he's certainly a great player. Looks great in the practice field. There's one ball. There's one ball. This is a stacked depth chart now. You already had one top transfer in Jaden Bray already there because Justin Robinson came in the summer. And if I have to pick now, it's certainly Jaden Bray. That's just off what the coaches have been saying and what I've been seeing. Bray certainly seems like he's further up on the depth chart, and he's more likely to maybe contend with Clement for wide receiver 1. I don't know where Justin Robinson fits in. He's also further behind in terms of continuity and chemistry with Greene and company. He wasn't there in the spring. It's going to be hard for him. Over under Traylon Ray, 500 yards. 300 yards last year, as you mentioned, around that neighborhood. He didn't really emerge until the end of the season, and he is a deep play threat. For me, that almost seems like maybe easy. He should be over that. But again, there's only one ball. You put him over, you got one of the best offenses in the country if everybody does all this.
Yeah, that's Ray's 500 line is tough because we've been saying, oh well, Hudson Clement could get 600 yards, Cole
Right.
Taylor can get 45 receptions.
It's
Yeah,
easier
there's
said
only
than
one
done for all
ball.
this. Yeah. Right.
So I mean, I do see an increase in Traylon Ray's numbers, and it wouldn't be like from 321 receiving yards last year to 500. It's not that's not a crazy jump. Like that would be a nice progressive jump for him. But I'm thinking just slightly under 500.
And he also did it last year, probably higher up on the depth chart than where he'll be now. Maybe he'll be higher because of the incumbent. Maybe Robinson will even be lower and have less than even what I'm saying. But you add in a freshman sensation in Day Farmer, who all the coaches love. They say he's more talented than 99% of players that come through WVU. That's a pretty, big statement there, bold statement to say that Bilal Marshall said recently about Day. So it's almost like you have the same guy that you had last year in Traylon Ray in Day now. So you got to get both of them looks, whereas last year Traylon was just the top freshman coming in. Rodney got 10 catches, but he really wasn't an impact as a receiver. There's more depth now, and it's a better receiver room. So this does not mean that any of these guys are worse players, or if Traylon Ray does not get over 500 from 321, that means he's bad or didn't progress. Even if he doesn't get over 400, there's only one ball. Day Farmer, though, I'm not going to put yards on the man because he is a true freshman, and that can't be higher than really 350 or anything like that, or else some of these veterans are having bad years. There's a problem. He's getting more time at the end of the season because the season's going off the rails. Something like that probably then happened. But they're going to use him. They're going to use him. I mentioned before, wouldn't be surprised if they go to him deep against Pitt because they flipped him from the Panthers. This might even be a low bar. I'm going to say Day Farmer over under 2 touchdowns.
I think I'm going to go over. Just
okay.
I think he'll get opportunities his first year. It might take a little bit. Like I could see him really getting those reps in the Albany game.
Okay.
Maybe that swings into momentum with Pitt, and then heading into Big 12. I think he can get 3 touchdowns though.
Okay, and I'll put it out there. Traylon Ray had 3 last year, so maybe you could even argue the over/under should be at 3. If it was at 3, hypothetically, for people that are going to scream that I should put it at 3 where Ray was, would you still be over? Would you push if it was at 3?
I would take the over. I'd go 4.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's not out of this world. And then you could stack yards if you try big plays with him. He's not bulky enough that is something that might hold him back. That maybe he's not physical enough. But they're going to try. And I think what you're saying is going to happen. I don't expect much from them against Penn State because that's a game you can't mess with. They're going to have a veteran-laden game plan probably against the Nittany Lions. But these players are going to get chances against Albany. That's the game where you make everyone happy. You get numbers to everybody, whether it's a veteran or a young player. You try things out. They're a good FCS, but you got to be able to do that or there's a problem. And then what you saw there, you can try to use again against Pitt if it goes well. So you can use Day getting a touchdown against Albany and say, we now can try it against Pitt. If he squanders it in the FCS game, maybe you don't look for him, but that'll be an important game. And that then will segue into our last player of this because we will save the defensive players for another show. And this player maybe will be talked about there as well. He's a tweener now. He's a full-on athlete, and that's Rodney Gallagher, who got a chance against Duquesne last year, messed it up with the fumble at the goal line. Not many chances came after that, but he is a really hungry. He's a great kid. I'll say that. I'm old enough to call him a kid. He's a mature kid. He's learning. He's coachable. All the coaches say that. And he's never been moody in any of this, of not getting touches, of now trying defense. He's a full-on athlete. That's why he can do it. Before I give you an over-under, do you think Rodney Gallagher gets more of an opportunity, so it's vague, but more of an opportunity as a receiver or as part of the secondary at nickel or on defense in 2024?
It seems like momentum's leaning towards the nickel, him as a nickelback. It's clear that the staff doesn't know exactly what to do with him, especially with all these guys coming in, transfers, recruits, guys they brought back. If this was next year, probably wide receiver, depending on what they did in the offseason, but it's still 2024. So I think it feels like they're going to fully commit to trying him on the defensive side as well. So they'll probably play around with it, but I could see him getting some reps at the nickelback.
Yeah, and even if you want to throw an impact of special teams, it's clearly going to be 2024 for that as well, because Preston Fox has solidified the job. It's his job. Jeff Kuhn said the other day it's his job. Neil Brown said Rodney Gallagher is not going to be doing that until 2025. So they're aware of this, but this is a culture. Even this is not years ago where you could kind of do all this. They need to give him something, or I could see him going somewhere else to try to get a shine. He needs a shine on himself before he runs out of eligibility, because he's playing all these games. He's going into a year, and the stats aren't there. The highlights aren't there. You did have a freshman who stepped up in Traylon Ray. It wasn't Rodney, who was the guy that was hyped up in the region, even though Ray is also a 4-star. This is, maybe they're not used to this, but this is the issue when you have, abundance of 4-stars and transfers and experienced players. They all want to get their time. I do kind of think there's going to be more of an opportunity for him on defense, although Bilal did cushion it by kind of saying that he's obviously still being used as a receiver. He's in the receiver meetings. He's going to get time there, etc. But I asked him about, the depth chart is tougher to crack now, and Bilal just gave me some coach speak on, it makes everybody better, all that. So we'll see. I don't think they want to publicly say, maybe this is protecting him. I don't think they want to publicly announce him as changing positions. I'm sure he'll still get some time as a receiver, but I think more for the defensive secondary, which might even be better for him. And I will tell you, I had a scout tell me off the record, I'm not going to say who, but they're okay with me saying this, that they thought out of high school he should have been a college nickel right away. And that was his position. He should have always been in the secondary, and this wide receiver thing never should have been an attempt. That's just what he screams being at the next level after he did it all basically in high school. But over under 20 catches for Rodney. He had 10 last year before this nickel stuff happened, and that was a year that everyone pretty much says he never played at all. He did get 10 catches. You have to imagine it's beefed up a little bit, or no, because of nickel.
I'm going to go under on 20 because even if he still is a receiver for the whole season, I don't know where he's going to fit in with the offense. That's just as simple as it is. There's a reason why they're experimenting with him playing the defensive side.
Yeah.
And he's a talented recruit, or now college athlete. He can play multiple positions, so it's not a knock on him. I think 20 is a high bar for him going into his second year.
Yeah, and he even played quarterback in high school. It's hard to transition positions, do all of this at the next level, and Big 12 is the next level from what he was doing in high school. It's easier said than done. I'm rooting for him. He is a great kid. He's handling it maturely, and all of this is being done to try to get him looks, to try to get him a chance. They're not doing this to be mean to him. They want him to have a chance to have an impact one way or the other. And you probably are right. They don't want to say this literally, but if they felt like he was going to crack the receiving depth chart and be a top 3 receiver, they'd leave him there. They know this depth chart's too hard for him to crack. So that's probably they're trying to figure something else out. And maybe he'll become a star as a nickel, and that'll be it. And then he'll be happy staying and doing that. If he struggles at both, if that doesn't work out, he can't crack the depth chart, then we're probably having a whole other conversation on whether they're using the portal to move on from him, or he's using the portal to go somewhere else, or maybe to have a full impact that maybe he's a group of 5 player. We're going to figure all that out this year. But it clearly is a situation where the program thinks he's going to be around next year either way, because they already are planning him as the returner to exceed Preston Fox, who clearly is still that guy as the return man, who also, by the way, Ethan, we keep saying he's going to have an impact as a returner. I didn't even add him. Preston Fox is going to get some time as a receiver too. I mean, he had some catches, he had some yards, he had a chance at the red zone and the end zone. It's not like he's out of the offense. When they throw the ones out there at practice, Preston Fox is part of that group. So there's only one ball. I just don't know. This is harder. This is hard for us on this show to do over-under. I cannot imagine what the coaches are trying to stress over, especially in this era of college athletics. That'll do it for this. We will have another one of these with defensive players. Some interesting over-unders we're going to do there, and maybe even over-under for the team in terms of wins or overall numbers for the unit. Like, say, for your brain, 2,500 rushing yards as a team. probably should be over, maybe even 3,000 when you look at what happened last year with some players missing some time. Sounds lofty, but it could be a thing. It could actually happen. We will see. Make sure to, again, like, subscribe, Mountaineer Report here on YouTube, and also find us everywhere you get your podcasts. Ethan, any final words?
We're almost to Penn State. I know we've talked about it's been a boring offseason, but thankfully, I guess for the coaches, it was a boring offseason, but just about 2 weeks from Penn State, so we're almost there.
2 weeks until Penn State. We are almost there. And, yeah, it's one of the more anticipated opening season kickoffs in the history of this program. And that's a serious thing. Obviously, you could argue the backyard brawl when it got rebirthed recently, but John and Tonic is talking about ticket